Welcome into an exciting episode of Get Better Together. I am your host, Bubba Startz. With me today is my co-host and friend, Jamie Gilcrease. Jamie, welcome back.
Hello.
Well, we were talking off camera as we often do when we meet up, and you're like, it's on my heart to have you record this because we're getting into it. And I am just so thrilled that you suggested it because now we can get into it and get better.
Yeah, absolutely, Bubba. And I'm so glad that you did record it and start to have this conversation and come in to play and how we hurt the others around us. And I think it's so important that we look at these things. I was just talking to you about how I got into a new program and it's around the attachment styles. And I'm super excited because what I do in my day-to-day practice of coaching, we deal with it's two different kind of theories. It's the iceberg theory, and we want to get down into the belief systems and structures of how you work, but also the hole in the bucket. Like, where's your resources, everything being let out, you know? And I thought, oh my gosh, if we take this attachment theory and we actually look at our core wounds and we actually see this because we all fit into an attachment, right? There's 4 attachment styles and they all have these core wounds. And it's just, we could go right there and be able to help you by knowing right away what your core wounds are and what your subconscious is working through. I learned yesterday in the call that I was on to say if I was accepted into the program or not accepted into the program. And it was around our subconscious actually drives 95% of our actions, our habits, all of that. And 5% is our conscious, conscious. And our consciousness cannot outpower our subconscious. What? Holy, I've been trying to seriously, consciously like change these things. And I have so many tools in my tool basket that I've been helping with people. But I'm like, oh my gosh, this could open up a world of healing. And so we started talking about relationships. And do you want to kind of go back to where we were and start that conversation?
Yeah, well, and we were talking about, how you had just come back from vacation and how, taking that time to cut loose, right? You have so many responsibilities, your business, your kids, your just your life, right? And much in the same way that I do, and how it was kind of freeing to have zero responsibilities for a little while, but how at the end where you were, cutting back on the drinking and partying and getting ready to come back home to your responsibilities and then seeing it in others. And I was recounting how, since quitting alcohol back in October, that I've seen it in my relationship with, my wife, my mother-in-law, how alcohol affects them, how alcohol has affected me, and being able to have some consciousness brought to that. And for me, alcohol has always kind of been like, the moral compass just kind of goes out the window. And it's not like after I've had a case of beer, it's after I've only had one, right? And having, no limits and not uncovering what necessarily wounds or what that may be that gives that, why it is that alcohol just throws that out, because I don't get that if I use other substances. We talked about, I have a medical marijuana card, so sometimes I'll use marijuana. Like, I don't lose my moral compass when I smoke pot. In some ways, it makes me, more apathetic and sympathetic to others' feelings. But how do I bring that consciousness to a sober life? And that's kind of what I'm working on now is like, why can't you be that apathetic person without smoking pot? Like, why is it only when you're doing this that you think in this way? And that's because of these subconscious wounds, I think, that you're talking about. And exactly why you wanted to record is that I have a sword, right? And every time, especially when, sober and just moving, we know I operate on a high energy level, vibrating high, that anyone trying to oppose that feels like an attack, right? And I would rather just come back at you with a sword instead of kind of accepting that energy a little bit and going, okay, well, what place are they coming from that, that it's not always an aggressive place that someone else is coming from that I need to be defensive of. And I get very defensive, even with my wife, and we talk about it a lot, but it's because, it's probably because I'm a bit of a narcissist. I think that my way is the way, and I'm so focused on this goal, and I'm really chasing so many things that I can't step back all the time and to look at the bigger picture and to try to understand someone else's point of view while I'm still trying to figure out what my own point of view is on that, if that makes any sense at all.
Do you think that maybe with that substance of marijuana, it could slow you down enough to where you're able to just see things at a slower rate, right? Because sometimes, I mean, I understand that full bore. I was like that for so many years. I was going 100 miles an hour trying to figure out all the things. I got goosebumps. Look at this. Look, I mean, and so for me, taking that step back, and for me, it was different. It was heartbreak, right? That got me to slow down and take time. And I mean, the other day, I had some heartbreak happen the other day again, and just be in that. And something that I thought was supposed to be working towards something wasn't that. Good grief. So anyways, I took another day where I got quiet. I mean, I didn't use substance, but I got quiet. I laid in bed literally from 2 p.m. until evening, and took a tubby and just really slowed down and kind of got quiet within myself. And just because the world is going so fast. And it's not going to stop on the account of our pain or our suffering or our wanting to get somewhere, right? And so, yeah, I understand how those core wounds come in. And when you're going so fast, it's hard to even recognize when those core wounds are literally leading our steps, right? I think we talked about that in another video, is like those core wounds, as we're navigating, they're driving us. And we just talked, I just talked about how the conscious, it's 5%. The subconscious is literally driving 95% of our actions, our habits, our behaviors. And we're unaware of that. Like, until you start being slowly taking account and having the conversations, and you might be able to say, hey, Jamie, I noticed that you said this. What does that really mean to you? Right? And we start getting a little bit down deeper, and we go back to those questions, insightful questions, because I know that you, Bubba, hold all of your answers for everything. I don't know. I don't know if that kind of is bringing up anything for you, but I kind
Well,
of went off.
exactly the slowing down. Like, I don't ever, because that 95% is also doing 95 miles an hour down a wide open highway, I don't ever have to slow down, right? I am in much uncharted territory because of the industry we're in with this podcast network and all of these new things, and because of who I am. I just did a new kind of star chart personality test, the Align app, and it's allowed me some insight, and calling the terms that she used was a generator, right? Like, you aren't made necessarily to slow down. You are made to go and to be in that new space. That's where your energy lies, right? So it's like, okay, that can be true, but also you don't have to be an asshole all the time to every single, anytime someone kind of poses some opposition. And for me, I take criticism and opposition so much better outside of my home and my personal circle, right? Because I want my personal circle to kind of just shut up and support me in so many ways, and that I only listen to people that are kind of outside of that. And my poor wife, Danielle, is the one who kind of gets the brunt of that usually, to where, and there's something about it's a mentality switch, right? Where I am, go just do, we'll deal with problems as they come at us. She's looking 6 months down the road and going, but what if this happens? And I'm like, we haven't even built the plane yet, and you're worried about it crashing into the ground and burning up. And I'm like, I am so not worried about that problem right now. Like, we haven't even gotten there yet. And some of that is maybe, and also probably work that she needs to do, worries that she carries as well from her mom being an extreme worrier, and having this, oh well, yes, everything can go wrong, anything is possible, right? And I am just the kind of person where, like, I'm not going to worry about something until it's right here. Why would I worry about something that may not even happen 6 months down the road, when our lives and everything about the situation can be completely different? But it doesn't also mean that I have to come out with the sword and to chop off an arm when they reach out to say, hey, slow down and think about the things that you're doing or promises that you're making in the moment, because how they may affect other people.
Right. And I think those are the tools that we're seeking, I think, and we're seeking to help other people, is how do we show up and how do we not cut somebody's arm off, right? That we love and we support and we want them to support us, but we're not even able to support them, right? Because you're saying, don't worry about it, right? And so what is the next piece is what's really coming up for you, right? And I understand where she's coming from in some aspects, because I was a worrywart, right? I was built on a foundation of fear and trauma. So until I personally went within myself and like started to reprogram that deeper internal stuff, I wasn't able to see the world any other way. And so I had to start asking myself those questions. Well, if I'm willing to ask myself, what's the worst thing that can happen? I need to be able to ask myself, what's the best thing that can happen, right? And giving myself these other pieces. How do I want to feel in those moments? How do I want to project into the future? That's where the vision, I do a lot of vision work with my clients, and I do vision retreats, vision board things, because I want people to understand that working then not only from the conscious, right? Because if we're stuck here, everything is right here, Bubba, even though, you want to wait till it's right there. But honestly, everything is right in your face. And if you take a step back and you get on your knees and you're like, okay, what do I see now? But what if I stood up and took another step back and stood up and looked at the whole picture, right? It's like, okay, that might happen, but what if? And giving her that space too is like, okay, how do we step back? How do we start having conversations? And that's where that level up collective that I started and using that cohort guide is really important, because we teach people how to communicate from a place to understand and not to respond. When we are so like right here, or when we're going 110 miles an hour, 95 miles an hour, we are only responding or hearing to respond. There's no hearing to understand the other person. And I want to be understood. So I want to also learn how to understand others and give that space. So I think that these are the tools that we're talking about. Like, how do we get from giving space to both people, right? She's got worries. That's real for her. That pain point is real for her. And the pain point for you is 100 miles an hour. Let's keep going, because if we stop, there might be a fear there. So how do we give space to both of those, right?
And you just touched on something there, that like the reason that I don't want to slow down is because then it allows space for fears and worries to creep in. And if I get caught up in the worries, right? Like right now, our financial situation isn't great, right? I got bill collectors calling every single day. The credit card payments are falling behind, but we're also right at that cusp of every single thing that we have built in the last year hitting at once. And I've kind of said that it's not going to be a trickle when it turns on. It's going to be a tsunami. So just keep moving has kind of been the mantra. But at what point can you not outrun that tsunami? And what point do you have to slow down, go, okay, we need to take care of these things, right? You can't just let them go forever. You need to take care of them and to alleviate those worries. And then that will build a stronger foundation for the other people around me that aren't necessarily in that space, right? And I know that right now I need to pull back. I need to slow down, to really start absorbing, because so much of what we've built and things that we're pursuing are starting to bud, right? And a nice time for that was spring coming and the flowers are starting to push through the dirt. And it's like, okay, you need to sit back and kind of enjoy this process as well. And yes, you've pushed and that push has got you this far, but now you have to let them grow. And it coming back to watering the ground, right? You planted the seeds, you gave it the energy for it to push through. Now you need to also give it time to just grow and to flourish and just be that water. And we all know the nature of water is to just be steady, right? And to flow like a river does, where it's not worried about tomorrow or yesterday. It's in that moment and flowing and moving at whatever pace it's going to.
Mhm. Well, I think that's why I work so much with vision, right? It's because, well, where are we going, right? And having that business plan for a business, if I'm working with an entrepreneur that has started a business, or if I'm working with a woman that wants to be more family oriented, what does that look like for her? What does the entrepreneur look like? How does it feel when we get there, right? So I want to bring in all these different pieces so that okay, we've watered, we've done all this pushing, we've planted the seeds, we've done this stuff. When is the time where I get to sit back a little, rest, right? Because there is a resting period. I mean, and we have to have that. We were pushed, came to, I mean, there's some real shit happening. So okay, I knew if I held on, trusted, right? And it's like, okay, it's gonna happen, right? Something's gonna happen. Which that day, I big company here in town that had some work, and I was able to do that over, and my car didn't reload. I mean, but this is I was happy. Like, I mean, there was some, things that are happening. It's like, okay, now what, right? So how is y'all gonna when they're starting to prosper for you guys? How are you going to know by feeling? What are you going to see happening? And maybe that will also give space to her fears and be like, okay, am I coming from fear or love? Am I, because I've done this work for so many years. And the other couple days ago, I literally crashed and burned, like reverted back to probably 6 years ago and my behavior. And man, that's hard. Man, that's hard. But again, how do we do it? Yeah. And then how do we wake up the next day knowing that we hurt somebody or that we did something that we know doesn't work? And how do you come back from that? You know what I mean?
I say I'm sorry a lot, Jamie.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, gosh, it's so interesting. And I think for me, it's also asking if my trauma is the reason why, or if because I don't set very good boundaries sometimes. I mean, I'm that person. I'm like, oh, I'm all about forgiveness and I'm trying to figure out this love always wins stuff and this system within myself and that everyone has good. And, I'm definitely dealing with some big, big stuff. I don't know. Did any of that make sense? Did you pull any of that or anything from any of that?
Well, totally. And it's a growing process, right? And it kind of ebbs and flows just like everything else, right? We're riding that wave, and it's the consciousness of knowing when you're on the downturn of that wave, right? And knowing when you need to give yourself some space, when you need to give yourself some grace in that, and that it's okay. Like, we're going to, like, old habits die hard, right? And that's not just like habits that you do, but habits of your thoughts, habits of your emotions. It's okay that they come up. It's okay, because but only if you take that consciousness that you have now and you're able to talk to, that older self, and to talk as that older previous self, and to say, okay, what do you know now? And can you correct that? And you have that consciousness, right? That's why we're doing the work. We don't become better people and better at all of these things overnight or over the course of a year or even over the course of a decade sometimes, right? There's going to be moments where you take those, and it's not necessarily a step back. It's just a quick reversion of like, oh, I snapped into that old person again. Wow, that was weird, right? That was an odd moment. And for it to feel uncomfortable being that person again that you were totally comfortable being 6 years ago or 16 years
Oh,
ago, right? And to see it on your face where you're not comfortable being that person, that's a huge step. And I think that's something maybe that we never give, like, especially people like me and you, that we would never give ourselves that credit for, right? That we would be, oh, well, yeah, and we're slapping ourselves on the hand over it instead of going, well, we are so much better because now we're conscious of that behavior. Me just talking about my narcissistic tendencies and my the harshness at which I come at my wife, mostly because that's my big everyday personal relationship, right? Most of my other relationships are in this format, are with people that I'm either just meeting for the first time or have only had a few conversations with. I don't have a lot of long time, relationships in that way anymore. The only person that I see and deal with every single day is my wife. And she is not conscious of a lot of the things that I'm doing every single day to grow this life that I see for us for our future. So it's kind of rude of me to assume that she sees that big, beautiful life that I already have the vision of in my head and all the things. And yes, I communicate some of these things, but if she's operating out of her 95% of subconscious and being unaware of that, then how am I to break through that? And we've suggested, I've suggested, and what we want to get is really being in groups together and talking, having that safe space to talk about these things where we are away from the grind of our everyday life, right? A retreat, to get out of that, to have zero responsibility, right? To be able to leave all of that home and all of that responsibility that can sometimes feel absolutely crushing, to be able to leave all of that and maybe to have 2 or 3 days in the beginning where you're just cutting loose and kind of shaking all of that off, and then having 2, 3 days of work because you're able to leave so much of that baggage behind that you would otherwise be bringing into that, right? I don't think deep work gets done in a day or in an hour. Everybody thinks they can go to an hour of therapy and you're going to be better. I don't know how I don't know how anyone walks out feeling better about just a single hour of therapy, right? Like I don't understand how therapy sessions aren't 2 to 3 hours long, similar to a Joe Rogan podcast, right? Because anybody can bullshit you for an hour, right? And very few people are going to open up the way that you and I do with one another now that we've established this trust with each other, right? That we don't spend a whole lot of time in niceties. We were only on the call for about 5 minutes before you're like, you got to hit record. We're diving into the deep end, right?
right.
Because we're busy people and we don't want to waste each other's time. But most people are going to come into a therapy session and spend that first 45 minutes just kind of emptying the bag and not even having a chance to pull anything out. You're just kind of dumping it all on the ground. And then you have 15 minutes to try and organize all of that. I don't think that that's a very effective, I don't think that's a very effective method for getting better at all.
Right. I think without the tools, like I have a lot of tools. So I actually do therapy. I do therapy every week. I sit down, but because I have these other tools, right? And so for me, talk therapy again, like you said, we're all unleashing and people are just throwing all this stuff out there. Well, then how do we organize it? Right. And so when I got goosebumps again like that. So when you talked about you and Danielle, like having that couples time or a retreat, like it got my mind thinking because when you were talking and not realizing or being aware that maybe she doesn't see the whole vision, that yes, you have been giving her a little bit, but what would that look like if there was a retreat for couples that they go in and they do maybe some of this cohort work that you learn to communicate a little bit, right? Better from a place of understanding instead of just responding. But then you also have these tools together that you build a vision. What does that vision look like for both of you? You know, maybe you do your own visions and then you come together as a family. What does that look like for somebody, you know? And being able to go, because we do come with these core wounds. We do come with all of this, our separate bags, and we think we communicate, or there's times where I think I communicate, right, in relationships. And you know, with me, that's my biggest pain point. Like, I am not in a relationship. Like, you know, I am single, and I find myself in that space, you know, based on the fact that I don't communicate very well. Like, I come from a core wound of abandonment and a core wound of trust. Like, I really struggle with trust. And so the person that I'm with, if they have a core wound, right, that they're not good enough, or like the attachment style, like if they're anxious attachment, it's awful because I'm a push pull, right? And so I'm like, whoa, I'm in. And then I'm like, whoa, 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 you're coming at me too quick. You know, in that trust, I retreat. So again, how do we help couples? And that's something I really want. And this new program I got into, it's actually working with couples, which that was new to me. I was like, oh, this is great. You know, like, how could I help somebody
Well,
like
and a
you?
big thing that Danielle and I do together that really helps strengthen our relationship is we do hard shit together, right? We're in the gym, working out, going really hard. But we also do other things, right? Big sporting events is always how we kind of cut loose, right? My wife loves going to Vikings football, and doing those. And I think it's a combination of the two. It's not just coming in and we're going to get intense and we're just going to do seminars and everything all the time. I think the day has to start with like, let's just go out and enjoy each other's company, right? Just go out
Yeah.
and do the things that you like to do together, or trying something new that's new for everyone. And I think that's a good way to kind of get on the same level again, right? And to bring that, whether it's an art class or it is going and doing something physical, or it's that I think the weekend or each day of a weekend kind of starts with that, so that you are in this, now you're coming into this space where everybody's on equal footing. And then you're able to sit down, and maybe it's the wives or the women together for a little bit and the men together for a little bit, and then bringing them together. And I think the work that we're going to do together, building out this kind of a program where it's not all just one kind of therapy. It's all not just the cohort sessions, which are extremely valuable, but
Yeah.
can be really intense, right? And
Yeah.
really, and it takes, you can't just throw people into that deep end and expect it to hit everyone in the same way. And I think finding equal footing over the course of several days and bringing people in and using music or using art and using all these different avenues out there, I think there's a way to bring the whole thing together. Some deep meditation and yoga and, some sauna, some really heat therapy, right? I love going to Sweat Lodge. That's my kind of like and I like doing it alone. I like going into that community, because I'm a different person there by myself as Bubba than I am going as a husband and father and then having to have other responsibilities while I'm in that space, right? And it's not to say that I don't want to go experience that with my wife. It's that I am bringing a different person to that space. And yeah, how it all works together, women's sweat, men's sweat, and then group sweat on the last day where we're all able to enter that space the same. I think it's going to be great. What we end up building and what comes out of all of these conversations that we've had since the first conversation, since I first got to know you, and really it started for me getting to know you in your episode with Sarah on her podcast. I know she doesn't really call it that, but that's what it is, right? On her show, and getting to know a little bit about your story and where you were coming from and just who you were as a person. Because it's very easy from the outside to look at everything that you've built and to build up this avatar of who Jamie Gilcrease is, right? Like, it's very easy to look at, oh, successful business owner and she's a boss bitch, right? Look at the way she carries herself in the public and she's always smiling and doing that. Meanwhile, nobody's getting to know the wounded, the experience that has built you into the person that you are behind closed doors. I feel very fortunate just as a human being to get to know that other side of you, because it's coming from a place of vulnerability. And you help me so much with my personal relationships because of the tools that you have. And I know your passion for, how do I give everyone else these same tools that I have? And I think that a lot of your healing is going to come from that, because of the dreams and the visions you've had of pulling other people out of the mud, that you're not going to feel complete until you've satisfied that, right? Until you've pulled enough people out of the mud to be able to look in the mirror and go, now you are successful, right? Which I'll already
Right.
tell you, you've pulled me out, right? You've pulled me out of a malaise that I was kind of stuck in emotionally. And I've done so much work, I don't even think about my relationship with my dad anymore. Right? Like and I don't get that angry bitterness about it anymore. I've been able to pull that out, examine it, and go, yeah, but that doesn't serve me anymore. Right. And now it's kind of on to the next stab wound that we're healing from, other
Yeah.
personal relationships beyond that. And yeah, it's a long process, and it doesn't happen over even the course of a year is such a short time. I think as humans, we built up that, like, that revolution around the sun is so, what if we treated each year like it was only a day, right? Like that's only a day. And started to change our perceptions of time. Like, you're not going to get all of this perfect in 30 years or 40 years or 50 years. Like, the growth never ends. And I think because of, society kind of beating us into, well, you should have it all figured out by 25. Who the has it figured out by 25? Right? Like, you don't even know who you are. Your brain isn't even fully developed at that point, right? But
Right.
some of us have careers and lives and kids by that point, and now, like, yeah, we
And
stop
I've been
searching for the
working.
tools.
Yeah, I've been working from these deep wounds, Bubba, right? So for so long, I was literally working from these deep, awful wounds. Yes, it did push me to succeed in like X, Y, and Z, but it also, like, I needed more, right? Because my relationships were failing and I wasn't able to show up for people because I was coming from this place of fear. I wanted to be liked, or these undertone of all this stuff. And so, and I'm not perfect. I hurt people. And there's some people where it's like, okay, well, you're coming from your perspective as well, right? Because we're all coming from our own filters of our own footsteps. And so, kind of like an onion, taking off each layer and being like, okay, like, because there's times where, I might be telling my truth. This is my truth, right? This happened actually a couple days ago. Like, I was telling this person that I cared deeply about, like deeply, deeply about, and I'm telling my truth, and he was not believing me. He's like, no, you're lying. You're a liar. You're whatever. And my old self would then attack because I'm telling you, right? And while you were talking earlier, I think because I allowed myself to go back into that partying and that just like free spirit, drinking, like who cares? Like, I wasn't able to come from that place of love and kindness and stuff that I normally would with that person, because I I was like, fuck that. Like, I feel bad saying that word even, but I was like, fuck that. Like, and I went back into this woman that I have done so much work not to be. And just I cut him at the knees. I used every piece that I had, even though it wasn't driving like my normal thought process, I allowed it to drive it in that moment, and literally trying to defend my stance on whatever it was by utilizing this hurtful stuff and just cutting him down. And I literally cut him down. I've never done that. In the 4 years that I've known this man, I've never done that. And I found myself so angry, and I'm like, he's done this to me numerous times, and I never went to that place, right? I never came from that place of like that hurt and that grossness. So gross, right? And I used to do that in my relationships before. It's like when you say the sword, like you hurt me and I felt that hurt, even though you might not have meant it. Fuck you. And I'm going to cut you and I'm going to get you like down in the dirt because that's where I was feeling, right? And so it was like, oh my gosh, I watched this old behavior, me step back into this old behavior to this person that I care deeply about, love deeply. And I was just like, oh God. Like the next morning I woke up and I was like was a mess. I couldn't even show up for the world, like bawling, like, because I hurt this person. And so yeah, I don't know. It's like all this work that we do. And like you said, like we can move forward and learn all these tools, but we can also choose to backtrack. And what is it? Our behaviors, our habits, like me taking a week and just drinking and being irresponsible. Like, did it bring me back into that woman that I used to be? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
And then that was going to be my question is like, do you think that returning to those old habits kind of left the door open for that other woman to come back and be like, yeah, no, fuck them. Nope,
yeah,
we're
it
good.
did.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. And seeing that she was right there, like that she was right there, ready to attack, which I have worked so hard and literally in 9 days was willing to go right back to that. And I think that in the last couple of days has really shook me. It shook me. Like, how do we allow that door to open? Like, what is it that our old patterns or behaviors, like, what is those things that allow us to go back to those places that we have worked so hard to get away from? Right. And because I am about forgiveness and I am about like, we are all God's children and we are all this. And that's my core belief. I woke up this morning, like thinking about this human and literally I had a verse in my head that I had to look up. Right. And I don't know the Bible. I think we've talked about this. Like, I don't know the Bible. Like, I mean, here and there. Right. And I love Jesus. I am a Jesus lover, but I'm like, okay, why do I have to look this verse up? And it was John, but there was a one in front of John, and I knew it. I had to look up the one in front of John and then 4 through 7. And it was all about love. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I just cried. And then I looked on the Bible app because that's huge for me. And I was blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, James. Like, and it was all about love. And I'm like, oh God, what did you do? Right. And so I have so much more compassion for people that, maybe have addictions or those things that, my addiction was keeping me safe. Like that behavior and that pattern, like how do I keep myself separate from love? And I've worked so hard to open that up and being open and people judging me or whatever. And I'm like, oh God, here it comes. Like, oh God, here. But instead I just was like, fuck that. I am back to that woman, like, God damn it.
And it can happen so fast. And that's why we talk about being a process and giving yourself grace. Like you're in such a better place now because you woke up that next day. You didn't wake up 5 years later and been like, I probably shouldn't have said that, right? Like when there's no
Right.
chance of going back and fixing that, you woke up the next day and like, oh my God, who was that? Why is she here? And we're addressing, so that's our conscious, right? That's the 5% trying to peel away at that 95 and going, hey, let's get to maybe 75-25 is a good start, right? Where we can operate on a much greater conscious level because the subconscious just wants to survive, right? That's the
Yeah.
ego. That's the id.
Keep us
That's the
safe.
every
Yeah.
just wants to survive, to be the best, which can drive us to in to insurmountable heights, right? That you wouldn't be able to get there if you were trapped in that conscious level of thinking all the time. You would never get there without a bit of ego, without a little bit of that unconscious drive. We need that. But can we Can we operate from that consciousness that is love, right? That consciousness is love. And me, I'm trying to, like, I know I have that when I smoke, when I use a lid, like the tiniest amount of marijuana or the tiniest amount of alcohol can take me down two separate paths, right? The alcohol takes me down that subconscious. Boom. We're going to shut off our emotions. We're going to turn off all of that shit that ain't serving us anyway. And we're going to get what we want, right? And whether that was sex or the party or whatever. And that's what I talk about, the moral compass. And it's not like I would never treat on my wife, right? But I don't have those thoughts sober, and I don't have those thoughts if I smoke pot. But if I have a little bit of alcohol, it's all of a sudden, oh, I'm just recognizing these thoughts and like, no fucking way. No way. I'm not even willing to court the idea of it. And if alcohol is going to lead me down that path, then fuck you, alcohol. I'm not going to open that door. Like, and to the point where I just, like, I don't have a taste for it anymore. I would love to, say that I probably could, right? But maybe not. Maybe, and I'm not willing to even tempt it, right? And even hearing your story where you're like, okay, no, zero responsibility, I'm a drink. And then hearing your story of like, oh, I went right back to that person. That's enough for me to go, nope, not doing it. Not
Right,
doing it.
because you look at that, it looks fun and it looks enticing. Because I think that too, like we see people and we're like, oh my God, they're having so much fun. And then it's like, okay, what's the reality of this? Like I literally have worked years and years and years to strip these pieces from myself and come from this place of love and come from this place of, knowing that others exist and the empathy and the empathetic parts of me. And then I was like, oh my gosh, James. You just literally cut this person down to nothing that you love. And you don't really believe that these pieces, right? Like you have pieces to work through, but you don't believe this wholeheartedly about them. And it was awful. It was awful to see myself. And until I think we had this conversation, like things weren't clicking for me and understanding, right? But there's this deeper knowing. There's this such deeper knowing of something so much higher than me saying, James, look at the whole picture, right? Like when we were talking about stepping back, like when we're right here in it, we only see that, right? We only see the hurt and the pain. But then if I step back, get on my knees, kind of look around, I see a little bit more. And then if I stand up and look, I'm like, oh my gosh. And the impact of that, right? And the impact of hurting another person, like cutting them with the sword. And usually it's the sword takes out the people that we love the most. It's like, okay, how do we stay in that centered spot? I think cutting out alcohol, like for me, yeah, it's probably a good thing for me because yeah, it was fun and to let loose a little bit, not have worries. But could I have done a retreat somewhere and done like painting or,
Well,
writing a
even
book?
done the same thing, but just without the alcohol, right?
Yeah,
Like even if
right.
everybody else is doing it, no, guys, I'm good, and I'll drive the Camaro, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. I mean, and that night, like I had stopped drinking, right? And so then, but I think the effects are still there. I think the undertone is still there.
I cracked that door open. It
It
cracked that door open for that other woman to come back
that
and to
defensive.
yeah, and unfortunately, alcohol being so societally, socially acceptable, right? And especially alcohol abuse, most people don't need 6 beers. Well, like, and 6 is a pretty low number for some people. I drank
Yeah.
cases. Like I just didn't care. I would drink all of it until it's gone. Like you can't leave it around me. But I cleared out my shelves, right? A few months back where I was like, no, I'm done with this stuff. I'm emptying the fridge. And I haven't worked on this fridge yet. It's still, but it's all just sitting there. And not that I'm even tempted by it, but why am I letting you take up space in my life? Like I could put good food in there that I
Yeah.
love, right?
Yeah. And that's interesting because that's something like at my home, I have alcohol at my home, but like I have a bottle of Crown Royal that's been there probably for a year. Like I've had it, like I haven't even opened it because like in that moment, like I don't need it. Like, You know what I mean? But there was a time I had split up with a partner. And I ended up calling my friend. I was like, I need all the alcohol out of my house. I need anything and everything out because I was in such a bad space, you know? And I think that there was a lot of healing that took place in that. And then slowly but surely was, you know, here and there, I'd pick up a bottle or something if a friend was coming over and just having one drink after shoveling a ton of snow. And that seems to be okay for me. But the drinking, like as a coping or an escape, that does not work for me. It does not work for me.
Well, and I feel like it amplifies the days in a row that you're doing it, right? Because you're never really sobering up. If you're drinking 5, 6, 7 days in a row, like it takes your liver's not recovering. So you're just, even though it's been, several days now since you got back, right? Like you're probably just now done with it, right? Like it's just now finally all of it cleansing out of your body and getting back to your healthy lifestyle and getting back to work and your cohorts. And I saw the Superstars event, looked like it went so amazing. And like there's just getting back to who you are, right? And God, it's nice to go and to have the zero responsibilities and take that vacation. And maybe this vacation was all about just reminding yourself of like, hey, it's this easy to slide right back to that life. And all of these years of work that you've put into that can be erased in a moment. And maybe it was just that reminder that you needed to recommit to how do I get, okay, it happened. You got to give yourself the grace, right? You got to forgive yourself, right? Don't continue to beat yourself up over that. Go apologize. Say the things you need to do. Maybe take them out and buy a lunch if they live close, or send them flowers, or whatever you need to do to repair that relationship if you truly love this person, right? Like you say you do, obviously. And then to be able to repair that and to go, hey, I can't get this off of my mind, but I think this is kind of why this is the space that I was coming from. This is, why and I'm sorry, I can't take back what I said. I can't take back that moment of fragility that I let get the better of me, but I can be better now. And whether they accept it or not, it kind of becomes up to them at that point. There's nothing you can control about that either, but hopefully you're able to repair, this one relationship and to be whole again. But you're never going to forget this moment and the moment of realization of like, oh, wow, that person is hiding behind a very thin curtain and is right there ready to peek out again if you let them. And it takes a lot of light to pour and to completely dissipate that darkness.
Right. And I think that that's the piece. I think that that's the piece for all of us that we can learn is that protection and that can be gone in an instant if we allow it. Like, and I was so unaware that it was even happening, right? I was coming from a place of wounded and hurt because he wasn't believing me. And then all of a sudden it was like the attack just like swept me out. And then it was like, oh my gosh, right? What just happened? What all of that work that I've done, all those years of really coming back to center, not being drove by emotion in the way that I was before. And then I was like, oh Lord, like I am so sorry, and like knowing that for me, it's like, damn it, Jane, but I saw the human.
And I don't want you to beat yourself up about it because you would never be here now without all the work that you had done. And like I was saying, is that like maybe you needed this moment to be like, hey, you've been on this path, but gay girl, you got a long way to go. Right. Yeah. And that's why I think, helping other people, even though we're not like, you don't have to be perfect to help someone else. Right. We don't have to be in this place of absolute perfection and light and namaste. Right. To help other people get to this level. And that's, a big part of everything that we're building right now between all the networks I'm building, both broadcast networks and community networks, is that Everyone's at a different point on their journey, and we have to be able to help to meet you where you're at. And Jamie, you're a lot farther down here than most people. And that's why you're beating yourself up about not necessarily like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. Well, anyone can. And we have to be able to help people to move past that too, right? You had to experience this for yourself to know that other people are going to do the same thing. There's people that have been on a path for 20 years. Something happens in their life, whether it's a death of a family member or a relationship dissolving or whatever, that slide back into old habits, right? We've seen a fall from grace from pretty much every human, right? I mean, those are the teachings of Jesus, is like nobody has that God grace. That's why it has to be given to us, right? And that's why we have to give it to ourselves to say, hey, and for me, it starts with apologizing, right? It starts with the admission of it, which you kind of just did, the confessing of our sins, right? That's why there's so much power in that. And why I think there's power in these conversations that we record and then we put out as a podcast is that that's our confessions, right? Hey, yeah, I've been on this journey for a long time, and most people look up to me and see me as a lighthouse. Well, sometimes a lighthouse can crack. Sometimes a light bulb can burn out, but that doesn't mean that we can't pull the bulb out, recharge it, dust it off, or put a new one in completely and be even brighter in the future. And I think that we have to have these little slides. We have to have these little slides back to be able to connect with other people in the future on that journey, because we're all going to slide. Like, we're all going to have these moments of imperfection, and perfect is never the goal anyway. We're just trying to get better. The show's not called Get Perfect Together. It's called Get Better. Right. Because there's always going to be room for improvement on this journey for all of us. You and I, probably most of all, because we are trying to evolve to that highest level of consciousness and to be able to reach from whatever place that we're at to pull other people up and to keep pulling people up, and eventually growing beyond just right now. We're just pulling each other up, right? We're like, right. Oh, you slipped. Hey, let me help you. Right. And don't chop my arm off when I reach down to grab you. And that's why I'm so blessed in our relationship that we've never come at each other like that. We've always been very accepting of what one another has to say, because we've both shared all of our shit with each other. We have both pulled it all out and have been able to see Jamie with all of those wounds, to see Bubba with all of those wounds. And that, I think, builds that apathy and that empathy for one another, to where we're like, hey, she's not saying this because of her ego. She's saying this because of that wound's bleeding right now, right? There, it's gushing. And instead of coming from, well, she made me bleed, well, I'm going to stab her back, we're coming with the bandages. And we're like, hey, I see where you're bleeding. Let's get that bandaged up here. Let's heal that part, and let's put down the sword, right? You don't need that here. You don't need to come from me. And in our personal relationships with, you're going to have significant others in your future, I'm sure, but your friends, I know you care very deeply about the people that you call friends. They are your family, right? Because you don't necessarily have a family to go to. You've right. built these friends into that, but you don't necessarily see all the wounds and where this person was coming from. I know you said you've been friends for years, but have you had all the conversations to see, have they shared their deepest, darkest parts of you? And the fact that they were, calling you a liar, or that you felt that way from them, tells me that you probably haven't gone as deep as you need to in that relationship, because you were willing to grab that sword and to kind of come back and attack at them. And I know that my wife and I haven't gone that level, because I'm always willing to I'm treating her like someone who doesn't know all my wounds, but we don't, because our life is so big and it's been nothing. I mean, we've been together for it'll be 7 years this year, I had just got out of prison at that point. I dropped 3 kids on her, right? She got the instant family, one with a crazy ex that we've been battling just for visitation of our son. Like, it's been nothing but shit. We've never stopped and taken a weekend to say, hey, we're going to work on our marriage and our relationship until it's right, because we've never been financially able to take a whole week or however long it takes. It might be a month that we need, or weeks during a year to really get to that place. But the fact we are where we're at speaks a lot about the strength of character that we have to even get this far. But we could be so much better given some emotional maturity, right, on both of our ends to treat each other a lot better.
Yeah, and I think like when you were talking, I love that the maturity, because this person does know a lot of the deep wounds, and I know a lot of his deep wounds, like deep wounds, and I would never in the right mind use those against him. And so because we have gone so deep, right? And for so many years I was able to just hold that space for him. Now he wasn't able to hold that space for me. He used a lot of my wounds and cut me down in numerous things. So it wasn't a good balance. It's never been a good balance. So I think that there's some things there for me to understand, and try to like reevaluate like what that is for me, and learning boundaries and learning these things. But I think there's some trauma bond there. I'm learning about trauma bonds, and I didn't want to believe that we were in one, but I believe that it is. And but what I realized is that, before I would use those tactics, like you hurt me, I'll hurt you, and I see that so many other places. And so I try to always choose that higher ground, because I've been that person to just cut people down. I mean, probably 7 years ago, I was still really deeply into that. And so I was really looking at what my wounds were. And when I was divorced from my husband, I was at that place, right? I was like trying to find anything to hurt him. Like he was hurting me, I was hurting him. And I was sitting at a pool in Mexico. And the Lord spoke to me and something first. And I had been drinking actually that day. So it's like, oh, the Lord can't call on me at any time, right? But I saw this vision, and I saw this clear vision of that. What if I changed my perspective? And what if I given this human that I love deeply, because I was married to him and I never really let him in until the very end, right? I started to be vulnerable. And so then he was using these vulnerabilities against me to hurt me. But what I realized is it wasn't about that. Hurt people, but the Lord showed me that there was this map. And instead of like looking at, oh my gosh, he hurt me again, oh my gosh, and focusing on that, what if he was doing me a favor? What if he was poking and hurting me in places that I still need to heal within myself? Because then once people poke it and you're clear with that and you've healed those parts, it doesn't hurt anymore, right? And so I know that to be true, right? And so I want to be the healer. And so instead of attacking back to that other and really hurting them, what I could do is just come back home to myself. And that's what I teach, right? Come back home to myself, look at that pain that he touched and be like, okay, I have more work to do. And so with this other person I love dearly, I was able to use these tools and be able to see when he would say mean things to me or do things, there was a hurt, right? And a gash. And I'm like, oh, that hurt, that hurt. And so I remember telling him one night, he was very angry at me and he had some wounds coming up and he was saying really mean things. And I looked at him and I said, I'm not going to say mean things back to you because I love you too much. Like this hurts so badly, so badly. And so, and like, I'm looking at these wounds and I'm like, oh my gosh, that hurt. And so then he leaves and I attend to my wounds and I cry it out and I do all the things. And then more as those pokes, if they come from anyone else, it doesn't hurt anymore because I've tended to those wounds and I've bandaged and I've done the work, right? And so obviously I just went right back to this. It was so weird because it's so out of character for me to go to this place to know his deepest wounds, because for so many 4 years I've not ever done that to him. I've never went and just take him out, and I did. I mean, Bubba, I did. Like I took his wound and I just like and took it and it was bad with
But
words, right?
but
Oh,
also, if you're going to look at him and him saying those things as the push that you needed, then you need to also accept that you could be that push to them too. How dare he use your wounds against you? And maybe he needed the finger in the eye, or in that wound to examine his own behaviors and to go, oh, I screwed up too. Right? Like she hurt me because I was prodding her and she's never done this to me before. And how dare I? And I'm not saying that it is or it isn't, but I
right.
don't, but we can be both sides of that. And we all are, right? The duality of human beings, that we are all that one consciousness, and we don't always know how we're going to be used in these ways. And maybe it was, the days of partying that even prepared you to be that person again. Maybe that was coming regardless, right? Maybe he needed it, and that's just the God's way of like, well, I'm gonna have to callous up Jamie a little bit because she's gonna have to go back to this person, and through that, you both grow, right? You
Right.
both, and I hope that's the situation that we're growing to, and that you both come back together and are able to look at each other as mirrors of yourselves, right? And to go, hey, I didn't mean to do that to you. I was coming from a place of hurt, and that you both have that, but you only get there through conversation and through communing with one another again, and yeah, the confession of our sins one to another, right?
And I'm so grateful that we have this stage to be able to do that too. Because I think maybe as we navigate and talk about these things that other people will see and be like, oh, I think I've done that, right? Because through our stories is how I believe, like hearing other people's stories and how they've come out of the deep, dark mud. I'm like, oh, well, I did that too. Maybe I can climb out, right? And I know, and as you were speaking, I feel like got goosebumps again. But in my office, it's so warm. But I was like, oh my gosh, like maybe, there's a part of that I truly understand that, I've never hurt him like that. And two, it's like that's how it feels. I just hurt you so badly, and that hurt you so bad. And I know that to be true because of your actions or whatever, but that's what you've been doing to me for so many years. And yeah, it's such an interesting, as you were talking, I was like, oh gosh, touching those owies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we never know how God is using us, right? Because we don't have that. We're right here. We are not that step back on our knees and then stand up. And then there's levels above that still, right? And we don't have that, but that's why we pray. That's why we do the things that we do to get better. We use these insightful questions and these cohorts, and every time we get to know another human better, we get to know ourselves a little bit better. And that's my lesson of why you need to slow down, is that I prayed really hard, through December and January and even into February. Like, I just want to time travel. I want to get what takes most people 10 years to build. I want to get there right now. Right now, we're going to do 110 miles an hour and we're going to get there. And now I need to stop and realize that, like, hey, buddy, you're there, right? And coming up to, a few days from now, we're at this battle of the bands. I need to focus on, hey, we're here. We're in this moment right now. This moment is the most important moment of your life. And not because of what it means for your future, but because that is where you are, right? You are in this present moment right now. You need to be here. And that's what I'm trying to focus on, right? Like today, I had a phone call prior and I was like, that's it for the day. I'm going to spend some time with my wife. She's off work. She had a wisdom tooth pulled yesterday. So,
Oh,
to spend some time with Danielle. It's supposed to be absolutely beautiful here in South Dakota today. The sun is shining, and,
yeah,
and
they
we're
took
going to
a
get a little
sunrise
time.
picture. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and we've been having some great ones, and it's understanding that. And that's why I walk in the morning right away, drop the kids and Danielle off at school. We're very fortunate to live in the situation that we're at, where our whole world is within 6-7 blocks of each other, right? The school, and to some, while her dad was in the hospital recently, with his leg, and things are just continue to get better. Like, everything's moving in the right direction, right? And I kind of feel half responsible for him breaking his leg, because in praying for time travel, part of that is our responsibilities on the farm. Well, if he doesn't fall off the trailer and break his leg, we're not given that opportunity either. So I'm like, hey, buddy, next time you pray to time travel, maybe be a little bit more careful. Like, not everyone's prepared for that speed. And I want to slow down, right? That's kind of my big takeaway from our conversation today. And to just take this day by day now. You made it. Everything is building. I mean, the meetings and the podcasts have all led to such great opportunities that are all, like I said, that wave is breaking. It's starting to come down now. Enjoy it. Be about the work. Be about the people and these relationships that you've been able to form, and you don't need to chase anymore. It's all coming to you. Now it's that catch up time where the world is catching up now, and I'm preparing myself for the wave to crash, right? And I think what we built was a massive 600-foot tall wave that will swallow a lot of people that are in my life now that I still maintain attachments to. They're going to get washed away. And I need to be okay with that, right? Because where this wave is taking us is to that mountaintop that I've been praying to get to. And once I get there, it's not necessarily reaching out to the people that I've been attached to for 25, 35, 40 years almost now. It is for the other people out there, Jamie, that are like you and I, that have these wounds, but they know they can be better, and they have these dreams, and we know how to get them there. It's about pulling them up. It's about, okay, we're finally kind of getting put on that mountaintop. We are being washed up there, and all of this personal work that we're doing is putting us to that space where we can finally turn around to reach down. And maybe you needed a quick reminder of how easy it is to slide back to the places that we've been, and that you're not going there anymore, right? The old Jamie would have just kept going status quo and would have never felt bad about it, right? So think of how much growth it's taken to get to the point where you're just like, and it didn't take you a week. It didn't take you a time. It took you instantaneous of being like, shit.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's a great place to break off for today.
Yeah. That was beautiful. Oh my gosh. I so appreciate you and all the people that are listening.
Same. I
Yeah.
totally forget that we were recording and that other people are going to listen to this, right? But this audience is going to continue to grow. We appreciate you all liking, following, subscribing to all the stuff that we are doing, and to just come be a part of this community with us. We want to help as many people as we can. We have huge, audacious goals, as far as numbers go. And we're not going to stop doing this. This is our calling. This is our life's work now. And everything that came before that was just to build us to the human beings that we needed to be. It built us into that lighthouse, right? And now it's our time to shine, Jamie.
Yeah. Amen, Bubba. Yes. Amen. For all of us in this world. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for doing the work, and continued support.
Bye now.
Bye. See you.